Here on the KFYR Plus news desk, and Trump vows to tap America's liquid gold oil reserves and drill, baby, drill. The only problem is, well, is it up to him? Joining me right now is Ray Tevino, an oil and gas expert. Welcome, Mr. Tevino. I appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you, Jay. I really appreciate it. Excited.
You got it. So, Mr. Trump, President Trump wants to tap America's oil reserves to boost the economy during his term, but industry shareholders care about their dividends, not his popularity. What factors determine whether it's economically viable for companies to increase oil production?
Well, obviously, again, great to be here. And, really what factors are going to take in place for us operators and more importantly, our producers like us is going to be the price of the value of a barrel of oil. Right now,
Hmm.
as a country, this $70 to $80 oil that we are at right now is an excellent price. Shareholders get their return, investors get their returns, and of course, then all the E&P companies and producers out there like Pecos and the Exxons of the world, we all get to make a dollar. And that right now is a great spot to be at. Also, what we're looking for here is hopefully a way for us to create and build more infrastructure. So, really, right now, those are the key things that are going on. I know President Trump wants to do more, and I'm 100% behind that because with energy security comes America's security. So, we do need to make sure that we have the reserves that we have.
Okay. How accurate is President Trump's claim that the U.S. has the largest amount of oil and gas reserves in the world?
We are known as the Saudi Arabia of liquid natural gas. We have more reserves than Texas. It's an estimated Texas has 200 years of liquid natural gas, let alone 100 years of oil for not just Texas. And in fact,
Hmm.
fun fact, the month of October, Texas produced 44% of all oil in the United States.
Let's get back to the shareholders if we can. How much influence do they have over decisions to increase or decrease oil production?
That's a great question. Obviously, you want to keep them happy 9 times out of 10. And right now, over the last few years, we've done something different in the oil and gas industry that we've never done. And that is actually get dividends and, more importantly, strong dividends back to our shareholders and also listening to the stakeholders. And that's something that's new. And that's why the amount of drilling that we're doing right now is something that's very consistent, keeping that good price, but also keeping those that have invested happy as well.
Ray, does OPEC have anything to do? Not that they have anything to do, but do we have any barometer on what they do?
Just about 3 months ago, OPEC dipped their toes to see what would happen if they added more barrels to the daily production across the world. They threatened it and they didn't do anything about it because they didn't see a big movement on their part. We are expecting President Trump, if I'm correct, to basically put it more sanctions back on Iran, which obviously we need. I think they want to cut out their 2 million barrels of oil a day from the market. However, I do expect the United States to add more production because of that to the global amount needed every day, and I'm sure OPEC will do their part. But make no doubt about it, OPEC is still somebody that truly helps move the needle of the price of oil. And so do we here in America. President Trump lifted the ban on some of those offshore leases that the previous administration had placed. And by doing that, drilling in the Gulf of America, as it is now,
Hmm.
will actually be able to fight OPEC more and actually help move the needle on the price of oil up or down.
Well, let's talk about that. How much impact can political leaders like President Trump or even other, Saudi kings have on the oil and gas industry?
Yes, a very major impact. President Trump, right now, as you know, is doing everything he can to threaten these tariffs to countries far and near and far.
Hmm.
And as we see, these countries are taking that seriously and coming back to negotiation tables right now rather than have these tariffs come in place. So President Trump has been more productive in the first less than 30 days in office than any president in history. And that's probably the truth. And I'm not a political scholar of any kind. You look what he did last week in Japan, which is probably something very exciting for North Dakota that we're going to be trying to set up a pipeline in Alaska to get Japan more oil and natural gas, which means not only will that oil come from Alaska and probably Canada, but also from great places like the Bakken there in North Dakota, and hopefully ramp up production there. And then you look at Saudi Arabia, and no doubt about it, the kings there still do something. But people may not know this, but President Trump has an excellent relationship with the Middle East. Look what he did with the Abraham Accords. People know that and they recognize that. And so, with the strong leadership that we have, and of course, some of the other strong leadership, I do see that oil will be making a great bounce in 2025 because of that strong leadership.
Ray, what are the current break-even prices for oil production in, well, I guess your region, and if you can tell us our region as well, that how do they affect production decisions?
Yes, well, obviously the break even for those out there that don't know, that's actually the cost a barrel takes, the amount of barrel of oil takes to actually for the E&P companies and operators to break even in the price of getting that barrel of oil out of the ground. And right now it is so varied depending on where you're at, whether it's in North Dakota or Texas. But I do know that right now we have a little bit of a gap, but it's not much. And again, that's why I like to say that $70 oil price that we're at right now is a great spot for our economy to thrive, for the E&P companies to thrive, and more importantly, for the American people to get out and enjoy, whether it's traveling by air or by vehicle, and have still decent prices right now at the gas pump.
Ray, tell me what happens, let's say, during COVID, when nobody was traveling. The airlines were shut down for that week, 2 weeks, whatever it was. And, the barrel of oil, I think you were practically giving oil away at that time. I mean, what happens during that time to the oil industry?
When that happens, every operator and producer is different. Who would have ever thought we saw negative oil? My father's been in the business since the mid 80s, and that's the one time he can say I've never seen that before. But during that time, a lot of producers like us, what we did was we just held on to that oil for as long as we could before we sold. And the price, we never really truly traded at negative oil, nor did we sell. The average price during the month of April, that month, would give or take $25 oil. And all the big companies already had their probably hedges up or down to where that they were set okay during that time as well.
A question about that. You would know more. You're an expert on this. Why didn't we just use that oil to stock our reserves and just say, you know what, let's not sell it. Let's just put it in reserves. And, this is going to pass by whether it's a month or 2 months or 3 months. Why didn't we reserve that oil?
That is a great question. I'm glad you asked that question. Actually, the real reason why we did not fill up the reserves is because the Democrat Congress of that time frame between 2018 and 2020 turned down the president's request to fill up the strategic petroleum reserves at $25 oil. We had a great opportunity to help out companies by buying that oil at $25 and filling up the strategic petroleum reserves at a great price, and we wouldn't be in this mess. And in fact, the previous administration tried to do it at, they said that they would do it at $65 oil, and we never obviously got there. So that's where politics came into play in a negative way that hurt the American people, and more importantly, hurt the American security just because they didn't like a president.
Yeah, we're seeing that more and more these days, Ray. Yeah, absolutely. How does the U.S. oil production strategy compare to other major oil-producing countries? How does our strategy compare?
Well, our strategy compares a lot different because we do have to worry about the rules and the regulations, and we follow them, and we follow them to the T. Like here in Texas, we have the Railroad Commission that we got to follow. And so in other countries, their regulations are few and far. It's like the wild, wild west in places like Russia and Venezuela, where they just drill anywhere they want and produce it however they want and then sell it. And so for us here, we do produce the cleanest oil and the cleanest natural gas globally. And so for that reason, because of that, it does take us a little bit more time to get ramped up in production, especially in new fields of production, and new leases. So it does take us that amount of time to do that.
Why are gas prices ticking up, Ray?
Right now they're kicking up because we are in that winter months. They were getting the winter blends, and what we're seeing right now is when prices of oil were a little bit higher about 2 and 3 weeks ago. That's what the refineries were buying that price at. So they're now selling that gasoline that took about 2 to 3 weeks to get refined and get that to the gasoline stations, gas stations. And so right now, that's why we're seeing this uptick as of we speak right now. Not to mention the fact that we did just, threaten Iran with sanctions, and we're doing our best to hinder Russia right now against Ukraine.
Absolutely. Our refinery here in my backyard just had a turnaround just this winter. I think last fall. I think it just got done with it. But things like that. Do we see any refineries offline in the not too distant future?
What we'll see, and that's a too distant future, is going to see them then switching back to the summer blends. So refineries will once again kind of shut down to reposition themselves to offer that to consumers. But right now, knock on wood, we don't see anything major going on, and I hope not. It would be great to have another 4 years of just solid consistency like we had during the last Trump administration.
Yeah. What can Trump do to make it more attractive for the oil companies to really crank things up?
I'm glad you asked. I had a great conversation with the governor of Wyoming about that just last week. And we really need to do things in a more efficient way and really find incentives for the producers to go ahead and add more barrels to the production that we have going out right now. And
Hmm.
that is something that I know that he was in contact with Harold Hamm, Chris Wright, who's now the Department of Energy Secretary, and in that in that aspect, just working with the producers, we're going to be able to add barrels in a consistent way that still keeps the economy growing and still keeps, obviously shareholders and stakeholders happy with their investments. There is a middle ground. And I do know that President Trump's working with heads of, the states that are oil producing. I know Doug Burgum is an excellent choice for the Department of Interior. That was a no-brainer. I mean, what an excellent choice that
Hmm.
was. So he is working closely. And one thing else that a lot of people don't know that I've heard, and that this is true, is that President Trump truly listens to the experts out there. So to have Doug Burgum, the Continental Resources Harold Hamm, and Chris Wright, I do know that they're listening to all the majors and really trying to get a good idea of how to produce more efficiently and more barrels here in America right now.
Ray, is there anything in the geopolitical sphere that worries you?
Oh goodness, there's always something out there, right? Right now, the biggest concern is just watching Iran to see if they actually, follow these sanctions that they put in place. The other thing that does kind of keep in the back of my mind is Russia, and what is Russia going to do right now on a global scale? Russia, Jay, is selling oil at about $60 a barrel. And so
Hmm.
they're just basically a wholesaler right now to the global community, and they only continue to sell to places like India, who is a partner of ours, and other partners of ours around the world. And that just should be a no-no. India should be buying it from America and other places. And unfortunately, we just cannot control that at this time. And if we could actually get Russia to hinder and actually get them to stop producing, that would actually then stop them from financing that needless war in Ukraine, where we've lost people, unfortunately, to this just, war is never good. And we need to stop it. And the only way to do it is through their pocketbook.
Ray, is California still a major player in the oil game?
I would love to say yes, Jay. California, goodness, what an amazing state that could be. They have minerals not only from oil and gas, but to the critical minerals that we need today and tomorrow. And it just blows my mind when you hear the young people today say, I didn't know that there's oil wells in California. And so I do think California would be a beautiful place. I think that if we kept people in California and didn't bring them to places like North Dakota and Texas, that would be all awesome as well. But also, I think if we took the policies from North Dakota and Texas and took it to California, that would be such a thriving state with such an economy that it would probably, it would actually, compete with Texas and other countries around the world. So hopefully one day maybe it will be. But today, just based off the policies that they've done, I can't
Mhm.
sit here and say that that they are an energy powerhouse.
What are the main factors contributing to the anticipated plateau in U.S. oil production, and how soon might we see this plateau rate?
You know what? Wow, what a great question again. Peak oil, as we like to call it, we have still yet to see peak oil. And that's something that we've been talking about since the late 70s. And that's when, of course, we had the Iran issue of getting hostages held. That's when Saudi Arabia and everybody basically, stopped sending us oil for several months at a time. My father talks about the lines of cars to get gasoline. And we have
Mm-hmm.
still yet to see peak oil. We are still continuing to find oil in new places and in deeper places. You look there in North Dakota, and we had the Madison play of the 80s, and then the Bakken came alive in the early 2000s. So what's next below that? And here in Texas, you've got the Barnett Shale, of course, in North Texas, and then you have the infamous Permian Basin, where we were drilling wells just 1,000 feet 100 years ago, and now we're drilling these 10 to 15,000 foot vertical wells with another 5 to 10,000 foot horizontal. So the real question is, when are we going to stop finding new oil to actually create this peak oil? So I don't see it plateauing anytime soon. You look at the production alone, Jay, that America's doing. We're producing almost 14 million barrels of oil a day. And we did that during an administration that was anti-oil. So
Mm-hmm.
what more can we do if we actually ramped up oil drilling for new exploration of oil and ramped up production continuously? That would be just an amazing thing. That would probably not only just, you know, make that peak oil go even further down the road, but also just ramp up this economy even more, I bet.
I'll tell you what, we're all becoming gas and oil experts after watching Landman every Sunday night. I know it's off the air now, but what a great show. I'm not sure you've probably seen it, Ray, or not, but I'm guessing you probably have. But fantastic. And listen, I appreciate your expertise, Ray, and we will have to consult you going forward on, we'll see what happens, I guess, with it.
Yes, and what a fun show that was, Jay. I'm sure you had a lot of scenes or that you're like, that doesn't happen, and that. But
Yeah.
here in Fort Worth, we actually had the NAPE, which is the North American Prospect Expo, and also the AAPL, the Association of American Petroleum Landman. They actually consulted with Taylor Sheridan and their team to at least get a lot of the writing correct and also how to spell landman. So at least there's the good writing in there. And hey, it is action packed, but you and I both know that safety is number one. So 90% of all that action is definitely much avoidable, and we do our best not to have that much action out there, and
Absolutely.
I give props to all my landman because I didn't know that they were that active, especially with the cartels and things like that.
Ray, before we let you go, I've got to ask you one more thing, and it actually involves the show. We kind of left off the final episode, showed where Billy Bob's boy, I forget his name, was going around and buying some of these older wells that, well, like you said, were only dug 1,000 feet deep, and now you can dig down to 10. Do you see a lot? I mean, that's got to be based, I guess, on something true, right? Do you see that happening now where people are buying some of these smaller wells and then probably going to dig 10,000 feet down and over?
Well, we are visiting and looking at that idea, especially here as an independent and considered a small independent in Texas. Reworking old wells is that was our bread and butter for years, and how we really got to start by doing a combination of reworking old wells and drilling new wells. And yes, absolutely, that's something that's excellent. That we can go in, maybe take these old wells that might have been doing 10 or 12 barrels a day and getting them up to 50. But also, what that does is not only here in Texas, but in places like Oklahoma and North Dakota, is
Mm-hmm.
gives wells off that orphan list to where we don't got to worry about the state or the federal government to take care of those. So yes, that is definitely something that is happening, and it's always happening. And to anybody out there, I definitely recommend before they jump into any investments with any company saying, "Hey, we're going to rework old wells," please do your due diligence because that is something we're working on here in Texas. We're calling it the re-stimulation bill and trying to work on incentives for operators like Pecos Country Operating and to go out there and pick up these older leases and actually rework these wells in a positive, efficient manner for not only the environment but also to add revenue. And because a lot of these old wells, Jay, you find are in small town America. And if you can go into these older towns where these older wells are, you are re-stimulating the economy overnight. We're talking about the one gas station towns with a Dairy Queen, right? And all of a sudden you're there with your crew, being respectful to the town and the rules of law, might I add. But you're there, you're using their gasoline at the store, you're buying meals at the local Dairy Queen. And so not only is it stimulating the economy and producing American oil for every American, but you're stimulating those small local economies as well. This is a great question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. Ray Tevino, thank you so much for the conversation, sir. I sure appreciate it. I hope to see you again soon.
Yes, thank you. Have a great one.